Divorce has never been an anniversary gift. But that night my husband wrapped it in a silver envelope and handed it to me in front of more than 100 people. Elegant music, glasses of red wine, warm yellow lights falling over forced smiles. Someone laughed when he said, "If it weren't for me, Lucy would still be choosing curtain colors." I laughed too. But my hands were ice cold. When the paper unfolded, the laughter faded. It wasn't a joke. It was a property division contract, signed by him, the man who once swore he'd hold my hand for life. And right then, I knew, our 10th wedding anniversary party was the funeral of our marriage. That night, the house was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking. On the desk lay a small black hard drive, harmless to the eye. But I knew inside it was something that could either bury or save my life. The desk lamp reflected on its smooth surface, distorting my reflection in the golden light. I sat down, plugged the drive into my laptop, and when the first recording played, I heard Ethan's voice, smooth, confident, like a stranger's. "One more week, and I'll have the company and the reputation. She won't even know what happened." I paused. Not because I couldn't bear it, but because I needed to breathe. The man whose hand I once held through countless winters, whose breathing I once listened to on stormy nights, was now talking about me as if I were a number, a barrier to be eliminated. I played it again, listening even to the faint sounds between sentences. The clinking of glasses, the creak of chairs, the laughter of a lawyer. They were discussing marital assets, psychological evidence, a plan for legal validation. Ethan's voice was light, as if reading a script he'd memorized. When the recording ended, I took out my notebook, the one I always carried, and wrote everything down. Every line, every date, every detail. Numbers don't lie, and I had learned to trust data, not promises. 3 days later, when I arrived at the office, something had changed. The looks. The short whispers that stopped mid-sentence when I walked by. In the conference room, Maya was standing beside the long table, presenting the new quarter's media plan. Her hair was neatly tied, her glossy brown heels the pair I'd given her for her birthday last year. She spoke fluently, confidently, while Ethan sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, nodding at all the right moments as if he'd coached her line by line. I sat down in my chair, opened my laptop, said nothing. When the meeting ended, Ethan smiled. "Lucy, Maya did great. Maybe you should let her take charge of the main communications role." "You mean replace me?" "No," he smiled lightly, "just reallocating responsibilities, so you can have some time to rest." I'd heard powerful men use that phrase before, right before they removed someone. I nodded, packed my laptop and left the room. Maya avoided my gaze, but her lips curved slightly. That afternoon, I called Julia, the head of the company's legal department. "Julia, I need copies of all share transfer documents from the past 2 months. There was a pause on the other end. "Lucy, are you sure you want to know?" "I need to. It's not about wanting." 2 hours later, Julia sent me a thick stack of documents. I printed them, sat in the living room, and marked each line with a red pen. My shares, 32%, had been transferred to E.G. Holdings, a subsidiary based in Delaware. Legal representative Ethan Grant. I gave a faint laugh. So legal it's disgusting. I used to love how he understood the law, strategy, precision. Now I realized he'd used all of it against me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, looking down at the street, the city lights flowing like a river that never rested. Inside me, everything was quiet, terrifyingly so. There was no room left for pain. Only the sharp awareness that I was being hunted. I opened my laptop again and searched Ethan's folder on the hard drive. Inside, besides recordings, were screenshots of emails he'd sent to his lawyer, titled, "Asset Consolidation Plan." Step 3. He had listed everything: phases, timelines, goals, secure full company control before Morrison Group signs the new contract, ensure Lucy's financial competence is questioned. I read slowly, memorizing every period. Then I looked at the clock. Almost 2 a.m. I texted Julia. Meet me at the old cafe tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. Don't call, just bring the original contracts. The next morning, it was drizzling, the corner cafe was still busy, the smell of roasted coffee blending with the scent of wet coats and soft murmurs. Julia sat in the corner, her face tense. Lucy, you know if this blows up, he could sue you for unauthorized access. If I stay silent, I lose everything. If I speak, at least I have the truth. She slid the file toward me. I've never seen you like this. Like what? Calm. Scarily. Calm. I smiled faintly. Maybe she was right. When a woman has loved with all her heart and trusted completely, the moment she realizes she's been betrayed isn't tragedy. It's awakening. That afternoon, I returned to the office. The whole floor was quiet. I walked past Ethan's room. The door was half closed, his voice low, familiar. Don't worry. Maya. She has no evidence. I'll handle it. One more week. I stopped by the door, hearing Maya's laugh soft, smug. Are you sure? She's smart. Smart doesn't beat prepared. Everyone in the office thought I was leaving, but they didn't know I was staying. To watch every brick of his perfect plan crumble. That night, when I got home, I turned on the computer and began backing everything up. Files, contracts, recordings. I named the folder Mirror, Truth. I thought of the line he used to repeat. Business is the art of vision. I smiled, whispering to myself. You're right. But my vision isn't yours. I see what's behind the mirror. I smiled, whispering to the line on the fire. The street light spilled across the desk, making the little hard drive glimmer like a signal. I closed the folder and carefully locked it in the drawer, feeling like I'd just closed a chapter of my life. But at that exact moment, my phone vibrated on the table, its screen glowing in the dark. A new notification appeared. No name, no sender, just one line. I read it several times, making sure I wasn't imagining it. The words on the screen cut through the silence like a knife. Check the folder Mirror on the old server. No name, no explanation, just that enough to make me sit up straight. Heart pounding like a knock in the dark. The blue light from my phone reflected on my face in the mirror, making my sunken eyes look so unfamiliar that it took me a few seconds to recognize myself. Outside, the rain had started, each drop tapping softly against the window frame. The sound of rain blended with my heartbeat, reminding me that whether I wanted to or not, I had to reopen what I once locked away. I got out of bed, threw on a sweater, and sat at my desk. The computer lit up, the familiar interface appearing before me. Lines of code and old files surfaced like memories that refused to stay buried. Mirror. I typed the name into the search bar. No result. I tried another way, accessing the company's old storage system, the one that used to be our internal network before Ethan upgraded it to a new secure version. It took me nearly half an hour to trace a hidden path buried under 3 layers of encryption. When the Mirror folder finally opened, I held my breath. There were 8 video files, all dated during the same weeks Ethan had claimed to be on business trips. I clicked on the first file. The screen flickered to life, the sound a little distorted but clear enough for me to hear the scrape of a chair and the soft clink of a wine glass being set on the table. Ethan sat across from Maya in the company's small conference room. The dim light fell over their faces, making it hard to tell whether I was watching surveillance footage or a bad movie about betrayal. I need you to sign these papers, Ethan said, his voice low but firm. What if someone finds out? The firm and Maya asked hesitantly. No one will. Lucy will be the one held responsible. Everything will go through her account. I leaned closer, glancing at the lower right corner of the screen. The timestamp showed March, the same week I'd been in San Francisco meeting clients. My hand trembled, but I clicked to play the next file. This time, a different angle from a side office. Ethan was on the phone. She doesn't understand. Trust me. Let the media speculate. When the shareholders get scared, they'll want a man's face to reassure them. His tone was calm, as if discussing the weather. The words "video playback complete" blinked on the screen, in the stillness of the room. I could hear my own breath, uneven, shallow. Not from anger but disbelief. I had trusted Ethan so completely that I'd never imagined he could calculate every move so precisely. I pushed my chair back, stood, and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlights shimmered on the rain-slick pavement. I quietly wondered, maybe people only truly see who stands beside them when the lights go out. I turned back to the desk and opened the remaining files. Each video was another fragment: secret meetings, exchanges with lawyers, even scenes of Ethan signing documents under my name. Everything had timestamps, locations, proof. I saved all the data to a separate hard drive and encrypted it with the only password I could never forget: the date I signed my very first contract for the company. The day I thought we began. The next morning, the sky was gray. News about me still flooded the internet. Articles filled with doubts, comment sections dripping with venom. As I walked through the lobby, I could feel the stares. Even though no one said a word. At the elevator, a young employee stepped aside nervously when I entered. She whispered, I don't believe what they're saying, Ms. Lucy. Thank you. But for now it's better if you don't say anything about me. When the elevator doors closed, my reflection on the fogged glass stopped me. No longer the confident woman who once led a team of dozens, just a tired face. But in my eyes, something was shifting: a clarity, cold and bright, like the surface of a lake just after the ice melts. 12th floor. The executive office. Ethan stood by the window, back turned, when I walked in. Busy? I asked. Lucy, I don't think you should be here today. I just came to collect some of my documents. He turned around. A faint smile on his lips, the same smile that had once made me weak, now only hollow. You still don't get it, do you? These aren't your documents anymore. Everything belongs to the company. Who founded the company? We did. And I'm the only one clear-headed enough to keep it from falling into the hands of someone unstable. I looked straight into his eyes. If I were truly unstable, do you think I'd be standing here this calmly? He didn't answer, just picked up the phone and called security. Please escort Miss Grant out. She's temporarily not allowed on the premises. I didn't resist. I left quietly, but in my mind, another plan had already begun to form. If he believed I'd lost, I'd let him believe it a little longer. That afternoon, I drove to the old office, the company's first building. The sign was faded, the door locked, the windows covered in dust. But I still had the key. The small room still smelled of paint, wood, and memory. I sat at the old desk and opened my laptop. From the saved drive, I created a duplicate of the data and sent it to the only person I still trusted: Noah, the former head accountant. He replied within 5 minutes. I know what's happening. Meet me at Edgewood Cafe at 7 o'clock. Bring the drive. Edgewood Cafe sat at the end of a narrow street, dim lights glowing, a soft piano playing in the background. Noah was in the corner, still lean, his eyes deep and steady as ever. When I set the hard drive on the table, he didn't ask anything, just opened his laptop and skimmed through a few files. You intend to use this, don't you? I have no other choice. You know it comes with risk. I've taken bigger risks. Noah, I once trusted someone who didn't deserve it. The light reflected off the coffee cup between us, forming a faint golden ring. I'll help you, he said finally. But you'll need patience. You can't fight him with emotion. You need to let him feel safe, then watch him destroy himself. I understand, and I have all the patience in the world for that. Noah smiled, as if he'd expected that answer. I've worked with many people, he said, but you're the only one I believe can turn ruin into retaliation. That night, I returned to the hotel. The rain had stopped, but the wind was still sharp. I stood on the balcony, looking down at the city lights flickering like golden waves. Everything I'd ever had, my reputation, my work, my love, was collapsing at once. And yet, amid the wreckage, I felt something strange: relief. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of losing him anymore. And when fear disappears, what's left is freedom, and the determination to see the truth through. When I opened Noah's email, there were only a few short lines: no greeting, no explanation. At the bottom was an attachment: evidence, zip. Next to the line, I can't stand by and watch him destroy another good person, was a small dash: our old shorthand signature. a silent promise that he was telling the truth. I downloaded the file, my hand trembling not from fear, but from instinct. Some truths, once opened, can never be shut again. When the video window lit up, footage from the office camera appeared. The angle was from above, the lighting cold, the sound slightly static but clear enough for me to recognize every familiar movement. Ethan sat at the head of the table, the tie I'd bought for him perfectly in place. Maya sat opposite, leaning forward, her eyes timid but her voice precise. If we're forging her signature, we have to match the ink pattern and pen pressure. I know. Ethan replied flatly. My lawyer said as long as the evidence is in her computer, the court won't dig deeper. I couldn't even hear my own breathing. My fingertips were ice as they touched the keyboard. Ethan leaned forward, his tone dropping to a whisper. Don't forget, once the Morrison contract is signed, I'll move all the project funds into your account. When it blows up, Lucy will take the fall. I hit pause, then rewound slowly, frame by frame. Not a flicker of hesitation in his eyes, no sign of guilt. The screen went black, leaving my reflection pale and expressionless. Maybe that was the moment I stopped hoping. I'd once believed that no matter how cruel he became, there were still lines a person who had loved couldn't cross. But clearly, he had crossed them long ago. I opened the next videos. Each one was like a blade, slicing away at every memory I once thought was real. In one of them, they even discussed press coverage and public image management. Maya asked, if the public knows you're co-managing with your wife, they won't believe she's lost control, will they? They will. Ethan replied, smiling faintly. When people see a successful woman fall, they don't ask why, they just whisper, it was bound to happen. Yes. It was time indeed. But not in the way he thought. I called Noah immediately. He answered on the third ring. I'm guessing you've seen everything. How long have you kept those videos? Since before I was fired. I backed up everything under the internal process, but Ethan found out. He thought I deleted them. But I just moved them to a private drive. Why send them to me now? Because now you have nothing left to lose, Lucy. When people still believe in justice, evidence is useless. Only when they've lost everything do they know how to use it. His words made me pause for a few seconds. You're helping me because you hate Ethan. No, because I once trusted him, just like you. There was no bitterness in Noah's voice, only the weariness of someone who'd seen the truth too many times. I'll help you to the end, he added. But you need to be careful. Ethan has people on the board. Every move you make could be monitored. I know. I'll send someone to you, a data security specialist. Trust me, he's quieter than any lawyer you could hire. Before hanging up, Noah slowed his voice, almost like leaving me a message. Don't let anger lead you. He wants you reckless. Stay calm. Let him feel safe a little longer. I walked to the window. The New York sky was silent, streaked with pale lines of light across low clouds. I wondered how many women out there were looking out at this same city, trying to understand why the person they trusted most was the one trying to crush them. The elevator bell chimed. I suddenly remembered I hadn't locked the door. A shadow appeared in the doorway, not tall, quick in movement. It was Sarah, my former assistant. Ms. Lucy. I know I shouldn't come, but they're deleting data from the main server. Ethan gave the order this afternoon. They said it's system maintenance. But I saw him supervising it himself. What are they deleting? All the emails, transaction histories, accounting records, even the security camera data. I gripped the doorframe tightly. Sarah, do you still have backup access? Yes. But only for 24 hours. After that, everything gets new passwords. I looked at her and said quietly. Then we have one night. Sarah looked startled. What are you planning to do? Take back the truth. By 10 p.m., the company's main office was dark. Sarah and I parked in the back lot, outside the range of security cameras. She opened the system with a temporary password, then stepped aside as I took the chair. Under the dim screen light, lines of data streamed like endless blue waves. I accessed the accounting folder, opened copies Ethan thought he had deleted. One by one. Transactions appeared anonymous transfers. Temporary investments all traced back to a single account. E.G. Holdings. I took screenshots of everything, saved them on a separate drive, and locked them with double encryption. Behind me, Sarah whispered. Aren't you afraid? If they find out. Sarah. I cut her off. The scariest thing isn't being discovered. It's knowing everything and staying silent. She lowered her head. I knew she understood. When the data was fully backed up, I stood, slipped the hard drive into my pocket. A cold breeze slipped through the half-open window, sending a paper fluttering to the floor. Under the weak light, I saw Ethan's handwriting to Maya. Finish by Friday. Don't let her suspect. I bent down, picked it up, folded it carefully. Friday, 3 days away. 3 days for him to believe I still knew nothing. 3 days for me to prepare. I turned to Sarah. My voice low but firm. Take 2 days off. Don't tell anyone you saw me. What about you? Me? I smiled faintly, the light catching my face. I'll see how long he can still look in the mirror. Then I shut down the screen and walked out, holding the hard drive close to my chest like a heartbeat. Behind me, the office lights flickered one last time before sinking into darkness. I entered the conference room wearing a smile I'd sharpened many times before, a mask of confidence just thick enough to hide the fractures beneath. Light from the window stretched across the polished table, casting tiny shadows of coffee cups and contracts. Ethan sat there, as if he'd been born to the center of every negotiation. Maya beside him, her eyes glowing with the thrill of newfound power. They greeted each other politely, chatting like musicians before a concert. Everything harmonious. Rehearsed except one thing. I no longer believed a single sweet word. I sat down, placed a small recorder beside my glass, and covered it subtly with my sleeve out of habit. When I picked up the pen, my mind went silent enough to hear the tip touch the paper. Lucy, Ethan began, his voice smooth as silk. We can settle this peacefully, a win-win. I'd like to announce that you're taking some time off to rest. A few months away will be good for your image, Maya added with a smile. We can draft a safe statement, something reassuring for the clients. I replied softly, like a breeze. I don't need rest. I need the truth. They exchanged glances, part surprise, part discomfort. They hadn't expected me to say it so plainly. Ethan recovered quickly, smiling again. Fine, if that's what you want, we can negotiate. But you understand, a settlement makes things smoother for everyone. I repeated it in my head like a mantra, because it was the only thing that could pull me out of the pit they'd dug. During the conversation, I let them speak freely, believing they were safe talking in front of someone they thought was powerless. Maya said, task redistribution. Ethan mentioned record adjustments, and they discussed timelines as if they were expiration dates on a bottle of wine. I stayed silent, recording every word, collecting every fragment. Each line they uttered was a brick I'd use to rebuild something stronger. When the meeting ended, Ethan stood and spread his arms as if embracing diplomacy. Lucy, we'll handle this gracefully. I returned his gesture with a polished smile, the perfect mask I'd perfected over time. I left the conference room, carrying the recording like a silent witness. As for Noah, he appeared exactly when needed, like a chess piece already placed on the board. I called him after finishing the mirror videos. His voice was low, quiet for a few seconds, then steady. If you want to do this seriously, we need a new base, a new name, a safe exit plan for employees, and a contract that keeps the public from suspecting anything. Noah wasn't a man of many words. He was direct. I'll be the bridge. I know who's still loyal. I'll help you form a new entity, Aurora Design Group. Beautiful name, transparent accounting, and I'll arrange for key staff to leave discreetly, so clients don't panic. Our plan was simple but intricate. Nothing would be done publicly until everything was ready. Aurora would be the counterweight. The core team would follow me. Legal and financial details would be structured so that, once announced, regulators and clients would see it as a professional transition, not an escape. The following nights passed in focused silence. Noah handled numbers. I mapped personnel, and Sarah the loyal assistant prepared the internal files for staff transfers. We worked like quiet builders, no complaints, no noise. I invited them to after-hours meetings under the pretense of career development talks, subtle, gentle, guiding them toward safer shores. Sometimes, watching their faces as they left, I saw so many emotions at once: concern, warmth, even tears glistening when someone said they didn't want to abandon the dream we'd built. I held their hands and told them the truest thing I could. I'm not asking you to take anything from anyone. I'm asking you to stand with me when the truth comes out. That small promise was enough to bring them to my side because they knew the truth, once protected, is the only thing that survives collapse. While the team gathered, Noah took on another critical task. He reached out to a strategic rival, a major firm Ethan had once dismissed. They were the company that refused to work with him, doubting his real competence. I needed them not just as clients, but as witnesses, partners who could publicly validate my credibility and vision. Noah met their legal director at a discreet cafe. They exchanged information under strict terms, no documents signed until we had enough proof to protect our legal standing. They agreed to listen, with one condition. If you truly want this partnership, we need a quality guarantee and a way to ensure it doesn't turn into a public feud. I prepared the presentation for that collaboration as if preparing a case for my own life: concrete data, client lists, a 6-month development plan, revenue projections, and, most importantly, a legal protection framework for the partner. I wanted them to see that Aurora wasn't an emotional rebellion. It was a strategic, grounded, sustainable choice. The potential signing day took place quietly. Noah and I put our full trust in a few legal intermediaries. A former partner's lawyer and a data security specialist Noah trusted. We arranged everything so the contract could be signed the moment the timing was right, but first, we had to stage a prelude. Something that would make Ethan believe he had already won. I deliberately leaked a few small pieces of information about me, considering leaving the company to a few friendly journalists, people I had helped in the past. They released the news gently: Lucy may leave her position by the end of the month. Ethan saw it, smiled, and believed his plan was working. He was satisfied with his half-victory. That was the key. To trap a predator, you must make it believe it already devoured the biggest prey. Ethan, in his misplaced confidence, thought he had won, and that made him careless. He began revealing more through casual calls and meetings that seemed harmless, all of them recorded, stored, and preserved carefully like stones paving a path toward a cliff. Alongside reinforcing our team and strategic partnerships, Noah and I began preparing the legal groundwork: lists of evidence, documentation, backed-up emails, and especially the recordings of Ethan's meetings. Patricia, a lawyer I'd met a few times before, was quietly contacted. She knew my logic wasn't driven by emotion. Patricia gave direct advice: don't act too soon. Wait until we have a complete package, financial, legal, and media before you go public. A premature reveal will make people doubt you. I agreed. Patience, something I'd lacked in past relationships, had now become my sharpest weapon. I learned to store my anger in a locked drawer, taking it out only when the world needed to see the cards. The following days passed in meticulous preparation. Aurora took shape: logo, website, team, transparent accounting, spotless legal records. The list of potential clients was carefully drafted. Noah and I ran through every possible scenario. If Ethan used tactic A, we'd counter with B. If he accused us, we had evidence ready to strike back. Every move had a backup plan. On the night before everything would unfold, I stood on my balcony, looking down at the city that had seen me love, endure, and now, prepare to begin again. The cold wind carried the scent of leaves and distance. I felt no fear, only clarity, the calm that comes when you're about to change your fate with your own hands. The 45th floor conference room of Grant Group glowed under ceiling lights. Massive glass windows looked out over the Manhattan skyline, sinking into dusk. The evening light spilled across the long walnut table, where 2 rows of people sat facing each other, calm, yet tense enough to stop a breath. The clock on the walls struck exactly 6 o'clock. The door opened, Ethan entered, that same confident smile on his lips, as he always wore when walking into a meeting he believed he controlled. A perfectly tailored gray suit, navy tie, and eyes that swept over me with disdain. as if everything unfolding was part of his plan. I sat at the far end of the table, silent, my hand resting on a thick folder. To my right was Patricia, my lawyer, a petite woman with razor-sharp eyes. To my left, Noah, the former chief accountant Ethan had fired for being out of sync with leadership. He didn't look at Ethan, only straightened his file stack slowly, steadily. Today's meeting, the chairman began, voice even but cautious, has been convened at the urgent request of shareholder Lucy Grant. She wishes to present materials related to corporate governance. Yes, I said. I only need the first few minutes after that. The evidence will speak for itself. Ethan chuckled, arms crossed. I hope you're not turning this meeting into another emotional scene, Lucy. We're talking business, not. I know better than anyone that this is business. I cut in. My voice calm enough to make him stop mid-sentence. Patricia switched on the projector. Blue light hit the wall behind me. A video started playing, slightly shaky. But the audio was chillingly clear. Ethan's voice came first, deep and unmistakable. If you forge her signature, let the ink dry in the file for 3 days, the system won't detect it. Then Maya's voice, tense and anxious. What about the brokerage contract? If it gets audited, I'll handle it. By then, everything will be under Lucy's name. She won't have time to react. The air in the room solidified. The speaker's echo merged with each breath. I didn't look at Ethan. I only watched his reflection in the glass wall where the projector's glow carved every frozen line of his face. Ethan jumped to his feet, his voice cracking. This is edited, clearly fabricated. Patricia calmly placed a folder on the table. This is the original backup, extracted from the company's internal server, verified by the former legal department, with timestamp authentication. The court can verify it at any time. An older man on the board cleared his throat, his tone heavy as stone dropping into water. Mr. Grant, do you have anything to explain before we proceed? Ethan swallowed hard. I could hear his uneven breathing for the first time since I'd known him. He no longer controlled the room. Noah quietly opened his laptop and displayed the second slide. A contract appeared, the Aurora Design Group logo in the corner, along with the red seal of our new partner Marvis & Co., the biggest rival Ethan had once sworn he'd never touch. I stood, my voice steady but resonant in the silent room. This is the strategic partnership contract between Aurora Design Group and Marvis & Co., signed last week. All key staff from Grant Group have now joined Aurora. I didn't announce this earlier because I wanted Grant Group to have a chance to make things right. Maya's face drained of color. She tried to speak but only managed. Aurora is yours. I turned to her, meeting her eyes. It belongs to those who still believe honesty has value. The room went still. Only the soft tapping of a pen broke the air. A young board member I'd never seen before spoke up. I'd like confirmation. Has Marvis officially signed? Noah nodded, displaying the email confirmation. The figure in the corner read $48 million, a revenue any observer would understand. Once Aurora secured it, Grant Group had lost its biggest financial pillar. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. This is betrayal. You stole my staff, my clients, my intellectual property. You're wrong. I said. I didn't take anything from you. I only took what was mine and the people you treated like possessions. A woman on the board, Margaret Chin, the independent auditor and chief financial officer, spoke softly. Mr. Grant. The records show you transferred most of the company's assets to a private fund, E.G. Holdings. Would you like to explain that? Ethan's face turned pale. He looked at Maya, searching for an ally. But she avoided his eyes. No one in the room stood with him anymore. Patricia stepped forward, laying bank statements before the board. If you need further proof, here's the full transaction record from that account. Included are payments made to Ms. Maya Lowell. We've already forwarded this data to the State Financial Crimes Unit. I said nothing more. The room felt heavy, filled only with the low hum of the projector. Then, at the far end of the table, an elderly man, one of the founding members of Grant Group, slowly stood. He didn't look at me, or Ethan, but straight toward the board. Grant Group cannot be led by a man like him. The sentence fell like a blade short, Final, unquestionable. The chairman nodded, lifted the wooden gavel, and struck it lightly. According to company bylaws, Ethan Grant is suspended from his position as CEO effective immediately. Pending investigation, all executive authority will be transferred to the supervisory board. No one clapped, no one spoke. Ethan stood frozen for a few seconds. Then a twisted smile spread across his face. You think you've won, Lucy? No one walks away clean after doing this. You'll regret it, I replied softly. Barely above a whisper. Maybe, but at least I won't have to bow anymore. He glared at me one last time, eyes full of hatred, then shoved his chair back with a screech. The door slammed behind him, leaving the vast room echoing with held breaths. Noah exhaled, gently resting a hand on my shoulder. It's over, he said quietly. Not yet. The real battle begins when the loser leaves the table. Outside the glass, night had fallen. The city gleamed like a river of silver. Towers reflecting the lights like thousands of mirrors showing their own faces back. I looked out, feeling that glow both near and distant. A reminder that no matter how many mirrors are stained, the light always finds its way through. I stood, gathered my papers, and walked out of the conference room, leaving behind the place where truth had just been named and an empire had lost the man who thought he was its center. After that fateful meeting, everything moved faster than I had imagined, as if a string pulled tight for years had finally snapped, carrying with it the sharp sound of things breaking that once seemed unbreakable. 3 days later, my lawyer informed me, all assets under Ethan Grant's name had been frozen. Bank accounts, shares, investment funds. Even the house at the Langmore, once called the home of success by Architectural Digest, were now under government control. The news spread fast, as all glamorous tragedies do. On television, Ethan's image was surrounded by flashing cameras. His shirt wrinkled, eyes sunken, posture stiff. Headlines blared across newspapers. From model entrepreneur to investigated CEO. The fall of Ethan Grant. I didn't watch it. Sarah was the one who read it to me while I was reviewing the new interior designs for Aurora's headquarters. She looked at me, waiting for a reaction. But I only said, you know, the loudest fall isn't when someone loses money. It's when they realize there's no one left to blame. I said it and smiled faintly. Not bitter, not triumphant, like someone who'd just watched a storm pass by. A storm I had once been part of. 2 weeks later, a broker emailed me. The penthouse at the Langmore, the one Ethan and I had lived in, was up for sale, per a court-approved process. The broker was authorized to proceed to preserve the asset's value. I read the news again and again, feeling as if someone had quietly opened an old door, letting in a breeze that smelled of memory. That apartment had once been my dream. A top-floor view of the Hudson River, glass walls, amber oak floors, and the piano Ethan gave me for my 30th birthday. Now the broker said, the previous owner needs quick cash. If you'd like to buy it back, I can prioritize you. I stayed silent for a long while before replying. Okay, but I'm not buying it to live in. The day I received the keys, I went there alone. No press, no noise. Just me. Standing before the door I'd walked through 1,000 times, but this time, my hand didn't shake. Inside, everything looked the same. The kitchen with its white stone countertop. The long seat by the window where I used to read. The painting Ethan chose during our trip to Italy, everything frozen in time. Except for the dust. I walked down the hallway, my fingers brushing the wall. Every step echoed like a slow heartbeat inside a home that once had a soul but was now only a shell. I stopped before the piano. The lid was half open, and on top still lay the unfinished sheet music. The notes were broken, incomplete, like the marriage I had tried so hard to mend. I gently closed the lid. The sound of the wood meeting was soft yet final, like a goodbye whispered instead of spoken. Then I opened the window and let the wind in. The Hudson glimmered in the distance, its gray-blue water reflecting the fading light. I stood still, breathing deeply, and for the first time in years, I felt free. Not the kind of freedom that excites, but the peace that comes when you no longer carry what was never yours to bear. That evening, I received a call from a journalist at the New York Ledger. Her tone was polite but carried that eager edge of someone fishing for a headline. Ms. Grant, we know you've just repurchased your old penthouse. Do you regret it? After everything that happened? Regret, I repeated, my tone light, as if discussing the weather. Then I answered slowly, word by word. I didn't lose a husband. I just got rid of a debt. There was silence for a few seconds, then she simply said, "Thank you." Before hanging up. I knew that by morning, that quote would be everywhere, front pages, social media, reposted, dissected, turned into a slogan for strong women after divorce. But I hadn't said it to be praised. I said it because it was true. The next day, Aurora's office buzzed louder than usual. Sarah walked in holding a newspaper, her eyes bright. "See this, your quote's gone viral. Everyone's sharing it." I smiled, shaking my head. "Don't believe everything that has your name in print, Sarah. Some things go viral not because they're profound but because they make people feel less weak." She murmured, "Maybe. But I think it helped a lot of people. You know, not everyone's brave enough to say, 'I got out of debt,' when that debt is a person." Her words made me pause. I had never thought of it that way. Yes, there are debts that can't be measured in money but in trust, endurance, and years wasted on the wrong person. Now, looking back, I understood. Repaying that debt was a mercy, not a loss. Ethan left New York just a week after the story broke. Some said he went to Florida, others said London. No one knew for sure. But I knew wherever he went, he'd still try to play the victim. The difference was, this time, no one wanted to watch. Maya vanished from the media. A former colleague said she sold everything, left the industry, and moved in with her mother in Vermont. I didn't resent her. When someone chooses the dark side, sometimes the price isn't punishment, it's loneliness. Over the weekend, I went back to the penthouse one more time. Bringing a small bouquet, I placed it on the kitchen counter, the heart of the home where we once ate, laughed, argued, and fell silent. I looked around once more, then wrote a few words on a note and left it beside the flowers. "Everything's done. Thank you for once being home." As I stepped out, the broker stood in the hallway, looking at me curiously. "Ms. Grant, you're sure you don't want to stay? Once renovated, this place could double in value." I smiled. I didn't buy back the past to profit from it. I bought it to end it. The door closed behind me. The click of the lock sounded like the final period of a long story. Outside, winter had arrived, the cold wind sweeping through the corridor, yet somehow, I felt warm, maybe because I'd stopped seeking warmth from those who never knew how to keep it. And maybe, because for the first time in my life, I understood that loss doesn't always mean pain sometimes. It's the universe's way of giving you a chance to live as yourself again. A year passed since Grant Group's collapse. Everything seemed to have settled, at least on the surface. Aurora grew steadily. The team stayed loyal. I was invited to speak at several major conferences about female leadership in the new era. People called me a symbol of rebirth. But I knew better, nothing truly reborns, after betrayal. People just learn to live on, with scars that have closed but still ache quietly. One rainy October afternoon, long streaks of water ran down Aurora's office windows like threads of glass. I had just finished a meeting with partners from Seattle and was packing up when Sarah walked in, holding a cream-colored envelope. "This came for you," she said, placing it on my desk. "No return address, they only wrote. She'll understand." Her voice dropped on the last word. As if she felt something off, I nodded, waited until she left, then opened the envelope. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, handwritten in a script, eerily familiar, neat, firm, with a slight rightward tilt. The first line made my heart tighten. "No one understands a liar better than the one who once lived on his lies." I read the second line, my fingers tightening around the page. "Thank you for ending what our family never had the courage to." Below it was signed, Noah Grant. I set the letter down, staring into the void. Grant. That name made the room feel smaller. End quote. I read it again, and again, as if each time would reveal another hidden layer of meaning. Our family. I stood and walked to the window. The city outside blurred beneath the rain. The name Grant, Ethan's surname, now sounded like an echo from another world. But Noah. He had never spoken about family, never mentioned childhood or parents. We had worked together for nearly a year, shared long nights of tension, every detail of our counterplan. He was always calm and quiet, sometimes watching me with eyes that felt both near and far, like someone who knew more than he said. Back then, I thought it was a cautious accountant's stare. Now I realized it was the gaze of someone carrying a secret I never knew existed. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain tapped steadily on the roof, blending with the ticking clock. I sat in my study, revisiting every memory involving Noah, the first time we met, in that little cafe after I discovered Ethan's hard drive. He said something strange. "You don't know him like I do." I thought he meant being fired by Ethan, but now, it sounded like a hidden message. I opened my laptop and searched the old HR files. The personal section was blank, about family only listed born in Illinois. No relatives, no emergency contacts. Ethan once said he'd picked Noah up during an old investment project. That the guy was good with numbers but lacked ambition. And I believed him because back then I believed everything Ethan said. The next morning, I drove to Grant Group's old record storage facility, where all paper files were kept before digitization. The guard recognized me, nodded, and opened the gate. Inside, the air smelled of paper, wood dust, and damp autumn, a heavy mix of time. I flipped through folder after folder. HR files, 2014-2016. The name Noah Campbell appeared on the label, but when I opened it, the original birth record read Noah Grant, the surname crossed out and replaced with Campbell in blue ink. The handwriting was Ethan's. I stopped at the section marked Emergency Contact. The name had been scratched out, but beneath the faint line I could still read, Jonathan Grant. My heart pounded. Jonathan Grant, Ethan's father. I remembered him. A powerful man who once owned a major finance firm in Chicago. The one who funded Grant Group in its early years. He died quietly a few years ago, and Ethan had always avoided talking about their relationship. Noah was Jonathan's son, and so was Ethan. I sank into the chair, my head bowed low. The pieces began to fit together slowly. Precisely, in a way that chilled me. It wasn't coincidence that Noah understood Grant Group's financial structure so well, or that he knew Ethan hid assets through subsidiary funds, or that he chose to help me. He wasn't helping me. He was finishing something larger, something he'd waited his whole life to end. That evening, I tried calling him. The number was unreachable. Emails went unanswered. Messages showed only read. A few days later, I received a small package, no return address. Just a USB drive and a photograph. The photo showed two boys standing in front of an old wooden house. Snow blanketing the ground. One of them was clearly Ethan, recognizable by his confident smile. The other boy was younger, his expression serious. Lips pressed tight. On the back, written in pencil, Winter 1998 Brothers. I plugged in the USB. It contained only one audio file. Barely 2 minutes long. Noah's voice came through low, steady, with the faint sound of wind behind it. "I don't want you to think I used you. But sometimes, justice needs someone strong enough to pull the curtain down. I only helped you do what someone in my family should have done long ago. Ethan didn't destroy the women in his life. He ruined my father's and mother's lives. My mother died when I was 10. After he abandoned her, my father hid me like a stain. And Ethan lived as if he was the only one worthy of the Grant name. I promised my mother that one day I'd make them face the truth, and you the only one brave enough to stand up were the missing piece I'd been waiting for." His voice paused for a moment, then dropped lower. "If you're hearing this, I've probably gone far away. Don't look for me. Just think of us as two strangers who walked through the same storm." That night, I opened the window. The wind swept through, carrying the faint scent of rain. On my desk, Noah's letter still lay there, the lamplight glinting off each slanted line of handwriting. I read it once more, slower this time. "No one understands a liar better than the one who once lived on his lies." I smiled softly. Ethan had taught me what deceit was. But Noah, in his quiet way, had taught me what it meant to end things. That afternoon, New York was bathed in a lazy golden light, as if autumn were trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth before winter arrived. I left work early and stopped by a small grocery store in a corner of Brooklyn, a place I rarely visited. Not because I needed anything special, just because I wanted to go somewhere far from the office, away from the feeling that I always had to be strong. To stand tall among those who saw me as a role model. The automatic doors slid open, and the smell of roasted coffee mixed with paper and plastic. I pushed the cart through the pasta aisle. Fluorescent lights reflecting off the white tiles. Everything felt ordinary, peaceful, until I saw a familiar figure at the end of the row. He was bending down, his shoulders thinner, streaks of gray threading through his hair. In his hands were 2 packs of spaghetti. And he stared at the price tag as if calculating every cent. I froze. Time stretched within a single breath. Ethan Grant. I thought I'd tremble, but I didn't. There was only a quiet stillness, like wind brushing against glass. He didn't recognize me at first. Only when he straightened up and turned did his eyes meet mine. There was no music. No slow motion like in movie reunions. Just sunlight spilling through the window, falling across a face that once felt so familiar, now only a faded shadow of the past. His eyes were sunken, rimmed red, his skin pale from sleepless nights. He hesitated, then smiled a shaky smile, stripped of confidence and arrogance. "Lucy," he murmured, voice hoarse, as if unused to speaking. "I didn't think I'd see you here." I set my basket down and looked at him silently for a few seconds. Between us stretched a space thick with everything that could never be said. "Looks like you've left the finance world," I said evenly. My tone as calm as the weather. Ethan gave a strained chuckle. "Yeah. I'm working part-time as an accountant for a supply store now. It's enough to get by." He tried to smile again, but his eyes flickered away, unable to meet mine. I looked at him and remembered the man from a year ago. Tom Ford suit. Boardroom lights blazing. Voice full of confident contempt. Now, he stood before me, in the middle of a discount aisle, clutching the cheapest pasta as if it were a life decision. "You look different," he said softly, his gaze lingering on my long brown coat. "Are you doing okay?" I smiled a real smile, but not for him. "Better than ever." The air between us thickened, heavy like a sky before rain. Ethan took a small step forward, but I stepped back just enough to keep distance. "You know," I said quietly, "you once told me, light always reflects. If you want to see someone clearly, look into your own mirror." He looked up, eyes distant, as if hearing the echo of a memory. "So, do you see which side of the mirror you're on now?" There was no reply. Only the sound of someone's cart rolling by, its wheels squeaking against the tile. Ethan stood motionless, his hand trembling. The pasta pack slipped from his grip, scattering strands across the floor. He bent down, then stopped halfway, just staring at them as if those broken pieces were the shape of everything he'd lost. I watched him not with satisfaction, but with a quiet, distant sadness. Like looking at a faded painting. Some people, when they lose everything, are left only with themselves bare, honest, but too late. "Lucy," he said softly, his voice catching. I didn't try to find you. I couldn't. I just wanted you to know. There are things I got wrong for too long." I turned toward the glass doors. The sunlight outside had dimmed, replaced by the silvery chill of dusk. On my hand, light glinted off a small diamond ring. The one I bought for myself the day I signed Aurora's biggest contract. The sparkle was bright yet cold, a reminder that I had saved myself. Without anyone's permission. "You once said light reflects, right? Maybe you forgot that mirrors only show what stands before them. If what you see is distorted, maybe the problem isn't the mirror." Ethan froze. In his eyes flickered something, not anger, not regret, but late realization. He bowed his head and sighed. "I know." I picked up my basket and walked past him. As I stepped outside, the automatic doors closed behind me with the sound of a final period. The air felt different, wide, cold, strangely calm. The wind brushed through the yellowed trees lining the street, swirling dry leaves before they settled quietly on the ground, like a goodbye that needed no words. The evening crowd flowed around me, footsteps, car horns, laughter through someone's phone. All the sounds blended together, ordinary and alive. As if the world had never known the storms one person could carry, I pulled my collar up and walked slowly toward the parking lot. On the sidewalk, the streetlights flickered on, casting a thin glow across my face. I stopped for a moment, watching the line of cars move by. Some people rushed, some stared dreamily out their windows. Everyone carried their own story, their own secret. I realized life goes on, just as it always does. No matter who falls, who rises, or who disappears from their own play. A middle-aged woman passed by, holding a small child's hand. The boy held up a bag of candy and smiled at me, eyes bright and innocent, as if the world had never known cruelty. I smiled back gently, but sincerely, because in that moment, I understood, no one is meant to live forever in the storm. At some point, we must step into the light, even if it's only to learn how to smile at ourselves. I opened my car door, set the basket on the back seat. The diamond ring on my hand caught the passing light, reflecting on the window like a tiny star. I looked at it and smiled softly, not because of the stone's value, but because, for the first time, I understood what true ownership meant, not holding on to someone, but holding on to myself. I started the engine, and merged into the slow-moving traffic toward the Brooklyn Bridge. On the radio, an old jazz tune played low, wistful, yet full of life. My phone chimed a message from Sarah. Aurora got nominated for this year's Creative Design Award. The team's crying with joy. Want to come celebrate? I looked at the text and smiled faintly. The light turned green. I drove on. Across the bridge, the city lights stretching beneath me like a river of stars. The wind slipped through the half-open window, carrying the scent of salt from the river and the cool air of a night just beginning. I remembered Noah's words from that old letter. Back then, I thought he was talking about Ethan. Now I understood he was talking about people like us. Those who had to live in the dark to truly value the light. Part of me still ached for what was lost. But pain was no longer weakness. It was proof that I had once loved deeply, believed, tried, and that alone was already a victory. I turned onto the quiet street leading home. Golden leaves scattered beneath the trees, and warm lights spilled from windows, some people preparing dinner, others reading the paper, laughter echoing from somewhere far away. The world was still warm only sometimes. We have to walk through a lot of cold to feel it. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. No sound, just my heartbeat, slow, steady, calm. I remembered something Ethan once said, silence means defeat. I believed that once. I thought if I didn't speak, didn't fight back, it meant I was weak. But now, sitting in this quiet, I knew silence can be its own kind of strength. Because when you're calm enough to be silent, it means you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Maybe, when a person has weathered every storm, they stop needing applause or apologies. All they want is a peaceful afternoon, a soft breath, enough to know they're truly at peace. I'm telling this story not to reopen old wounds, but to say this. Sometimes, silence is the most beautiful reply. What about you? Have you ever chosen silence instead of fighting back? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you feel connected to this story, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe for more heartfelt everyday tales like this one.